Hey there folks, welcome back to the Tower Tech. It has been an absolute age since I last did a live stream. I'm very ashamed to say that it's, I think, August 2019, the last time I did one of these, but you know, the world's gone pretty mad since then. We've been dealing with a pandemic. I've been working crazy hours. I work for a supermarket here in the UK, so you can imagine just how busy we've been ramping up capacity and dealing with all that kind of jazz. So it's nice to be live streaming again. Actually, ironically enough, quite a lot of work has gone into getting the setup ready. I've got a mirrorless camera set up there, and for those that have got a reasonable internet connection, you might be able to spot that we're actually streaming this in 4K, which I'm very pleased with. I've had pretty potato broadband for the whole time that we've lived where we are. I was really delighted to see that fiber to the premise has very recently become available. So this is where they run a fiber all the way from the local exchange all the way to your property, and drill a hole through your wall and feed the fiber through. A bit like cable used to be, but cable was a coaxial cable. This is fiber all the way, and I've gone from like getting 32 megabits per second down, and what was an absolutely appalling 7 megabits per second up. And I know that might sound incredibly tech snobby of me, and I get that, but you know, as someone who's routinely uploading YouTube videos and stuff like that, it was taking me up to 2 hours to upload 4K videos. That meant that when I published them, it was like crazy o'clock in the evening by the time YouTube has done all the processing, etc. And actually getting, you know, waiting for the 4K stuff to be rendered on their servers. It was getting to sort of, I don't know, like 10 o'clock on a Sunday evening. So I did a test upload that took about 4 minutes, and being able to stream in 4K, I mean, honestly, that's pretty amazing actually. So I've not seen many. Of course, you can view it in 1080p. So yeah, really chuffed that's available, and actually not too much more money. And I had a pretty good experience actually. The chap who came and installed it did a grand job. But anyway, enough about my broadband. I've got a couple of topics that I want to cover off with you this evening. Those being, I want to talk about Microsoft Flight Simulator, of course. It's been, I think, about 13 or 14 years since Flight Simulator X came out. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking about what's great in Microsoft Flight Simulator, some of the challenges that have come with it, almost certainly. Famous last words from me in my last video, which was a review of the Logitech Yoke. We've also got, in the wider Logitech ecosystem, their panels. So it gives you like radio panels, allows you to do the gear and stuff like that. Famous last words were, of course, all of this stuff would work. Why on earth wouldn't it? Of course, it doesn't, or does it? There are ways of getting it working, so we'll spend a bit of time talking about that. RTX 3000 series cards, very exciting. September is almost upon us, so we'll spend a bit of time with a bit of a focus around the PCBs, the design of the PCBs, the cooling, and most importantly, the availability of water blocks. And then kind of feels like one of my videos isn't complete without talking about VR. Certainly the best performing videos I've put out really have been sort of VR centric. So a little bit of news around Facebook, Mr. Zuckerberg, and some decisions that he's taken around account management for Oculus. And then if I feel so inclined, we'll talk a little bit at the end about the SMA A8 build that I signposted quite some time ago. I put that on hold, put the brakes on that for what I think were some pretty sensible reasons. And yeah, I think that will round us off quite nicely. So let's start with Microsoft Flight Simulator. So really groundbreaking release. This is, and I think the thing that's most exciting about this is it's making use of satellite imagery as well as air footage and photos that they've taken from aircraft in the air, and it's using some machine learning and AI to kind of stitch all this stuff together in what looks pretty photorealistic scenery. And not only just photorealistic, this stuff is it's real. It's as near to life as you can create the entire world, because, you know, why wouldn't you want to try and create the entire world? The sort of challenge that most people are rising to is find your own house and fly to that. Lots of people reporting it doesn't look exactly like my house. Well, the problem with satellite and aerial photography is it's the top of the building, so it's kind of having to guess at the sides. But I mean, it's just an incredible release. A lot of us, I've been in the flight sim kind of genre community now for years. I had FSX back in my university days, actually using FSX flight simulator. I think it was 2004, Century of Flight before that. I distinctly remember sitting in my uni residence playing on that on a very decrepit laptop, trying to use the keyboard to fly. That was all the fun there was to be had. I've had Flight Simulator, not Flight Simulator, sorry, X-Plane 10, X-Plane 11. But I mean, this is game changing. But it's not been without its challenges. So a bunch of people reporting problems downloading the game, and I don't mean because it's 100 gigs. And to my aforementioned kind of broadband upgrade, I had to download this thing prior to this upgrade, and I had to leave my computer on overnight in order to be able to do that. But notwithstanding the size of the download, people have actually had problems getting the download to complete. People have had problems getting the install to complete. People have got some stability problems, and I guess none of this is a huge surprise. It's a brand new game, and with the best will in the world, sorry, simulator, shouldn't call it a game, but with the best will in the world and with all of the testing, it's really quite hard to get this 100% right, with all of the different sort of hardware variants and configurations and ways that people have set their PC up. So what's really very nice to see actually is a pretty early patch coming out. So they tweeted this out today, tweeted out a link to this page where they're describing the latest patch that they're going to release. That's going to be coming out in about a week's time, and you know, there's a large focus on the stability problems, making sure the game will install and download correctly. No mention, and I sort of alluded to this in the intro, so the support for peripherals that's there is actually pretty good. So I plugged in my Logitech yoke and my throttle quadrants, picked those up, put standard config straight on them, but I couldn't get the Logitech panels working at all. Didn't recognize them, logged out of the game. There's some test software that you can use with Logitech to make sure they're all working properly. Ran through that, it was all working fine. So there's a thing called SimConnect. It's a piece of software embedded within the simulator itself, and what that does is allows the simulator to talk out to not just hardware peripherals but all sorts of things. So third-party software, as an example, if you're flying through some sort of online community and you've got people doing real-world air traffic control, it uses SimConnect. And SimConnect was present in Flight Simulator X as well. So it seems there's some kind of issue with their implementation. So it's not talking properly out to some of the hardware. Lots of people complaining, by the way, that Logitech haven't released new drivers. I've got a ton of other hardware that I can use the FSX drivers for, and it works just fine. I've got some iPads that have got allow you to see a whole load of the instrumentation talks through your Wi-Fi actually, and the latency is good enough to do that. It's It's actually the implementation within Microsoft Flight Simulator that is causing the problem. So there is a workaround, is the good news. So this is specifically for the Logitech panels. You can go to a website called lawbysi.com. This guy makes a whole heap of largely payware type things that you can purchase to add in, customize your flight simulator. And he does a thing called Axis and O's. This again is normally payware, but he's actually allowing you to download and use this for the meantime indefinitely for free on Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that will actually get your Logitech panels up and running, and it does a pretty grand job of it as well, I must say. So all the functionality worked for me absolutely fine. It does, however, and you do need to note, it does have a small impact on your frames per second. I am drinking a cheeky glass of wine, by the way. It's a very nice cheeky Sauvignon Blanc that we picked up earlier on today. So happy Friday. Cheers all. So SimConnect still talks out to the Axis and O's software, but whatever part of it it's using is working okay in the Microsoft Flight Simulator implementation. But there is a frames per second impact, and actually that is acknowledged by Microsoft. It's also in the patch notes, and the great news is that's one of the things that they're addressing in this patch. There's been some optimization. Sorry, I'm highlighting the wrong thing. So significant FPS drop when using SimConnect should no longer affect the experience. Now, for me, using that third bit of software to get the panels up and running, the game wasn't unplayable. I've got RTX 2080 Ti. You'd expect some reasonable performance from that, but it was certainly noticeable. It was certainly making landings a little bit more challenging to do. So really good to see them acknowledge that there's a problem there. Really good, actually. You know, the game's not been out for that long, to see them getting on top of that. So if you've got the Logitech panels, I definitely recommend going to lawby-si.com, look at the products, go down to Lawby, Axis and O's. It's really, really easy. It includes instructions. Honestly, it was no more than 10 minutes work, and I was up and running using those panels. And, you know, just turn your video settings down temporarily until that patch comes out in about a week's time, and you know, it really is quite a bit more immersive and easy to do, particularly if you're trying to fly, accurately, trying to use, you know, proper navigation and stuff like that. It's quite hard really to kind of move around with the mouse and click the, you know, what are relatively tiny little dials in the simulator. So yeah, definitely go and check them out. lawby-si.com. Can see King Clueless, whom I know personally, telling me that drinking wine is not like me. It's definitely not like you, sir. You're not much of a big drinker, but most definitely like me, particularly on a Friday evening. Good to see you. Right, on to the next topics. So, RTX 3000 cards. Wow, so much speculation, a myriad of photograph leaks. I can never work out whether these photo leaks are actual real leaks or whether it's, I guess, what you would call a controlled leak by the manufacturer to kind of drive up a little bit of hype. So they, you know, these photographs have been leaking online now for a couple of weeks, but quite excitingly yesterday, in fact the day before yesterday, but late the day before yesterday, some actual acknowledgement from Nvidia themselves in a very surprised released video that came out on the NVIDIA GeForce YouTube channel. And whilst it doesn't talk about the actual GPU in loads of detail, it does acknowledge the new cooler design. It does acknowledge the new 12-pin connector design. So it's a bunch of engineers sitting and talking through why it is that they've done what they've done. They've got a kind of sort of V-shaped PCB. I've never seen one of those before, that supports a fan pulling air all of the way through the card. It's on, as I say, the NVIDIA GeForce YouTube channel. Definitely go and check it out. It's a really, really interesting video. But the first real acknowledgement from NVIDIA that we're getting close to the 3000 series release of GPUs. So, you know, September looming just a couple of days away. These things are absolute behemoths, by the way. So on the Hexus.net website, some pictures comparing what is speculated to be a 3090 next to an RTX 2080. This is the Founders Edition triple slot design. Now, when I saw that, I did have to look in my PC and actually check to make sure that if I was to have two of these, and of course we've got no confirmation at all that there is any kind of SLI or NVLink or any of that sort of jazz. So, you know, they might have, I'd be surprised, but they might have dropped dual GPU support. Of course, when the 1080 series came out, they dropped 3 and quad card support. And increasingly, we're seeing game developers not really adopting the SLI standard. But, you know, looking at that thing next to an RTX 2080, it's an absolute behemoth. I mean, it's longer and taller, and yes, all the jokes, that's what she said, yeah. But, I mean, this is going to be a hot running, power-hungry card. I've seen speculation of sort of 300 watts and a single card system requiring a 850 watt PSU. Now that is one hell of a behemoth, of a card. But I think most excitingly for me is that Alpha Cool and water clocks, EK water blocks, have both come out and in a tweet, effectively, that they are going to have water blocks available near or at launch, which is fantastic to see. I pre-ordered my 2080 Ti's, quite the wait, actually, a number of weeks I had to wait for those to come in. I had to install them just as they were. Getting hold of the water blocks was near on impossible, actually, at the time. So really good to see that acknowledgement coming out early. I mean, I'm not sure that they've broken any sort of NDA or anything like that. It's pretty well in the public domain that those cards are coming out now, an acknowledgement from NVIDIA. But, you know, the hype really starting to ramp up for those now. Can't quite work out whether the 3090 is a Titan replacement. It certainly looks like, again, in some speculated leaked specs, it's got 24 gigs of VRAM. That puts it on the same sort of plane as the RTX Titan. No 3080 Ti at launch, but a 3080. But yeah, it will be really interesting to see the price point that these things came in. The RTX 2080 Ti was a pretty eye-watering, about 1,200 UK pounds. I mean, you can build an entire system for that sort of cost. So there's clearly people out there, you know, enthusiasts that will pay that. What will be interesting to see is where the sort of the 3070, 3080s kind of sit. I'm hoping that'll be around the 650 mark for the 3070 and around about the 800 mark, maybe a smidge over 800 for the 3080. That will put it largely in parity with the 2080 and 2070s when they released as well. So really looking forward to that. Probably not going to pre-order this time. I'm I wasn't disappointed with my 2080s. It wouldn't be fair of me to say that, but it would be remiss of me to say the whole ray tracing thing had very, very little support at release, and really, actually, even a couple of years on, I mean, there's some brilliant implementations in some of the games that you can see, but it's not as widespread as you would like to see. And actually, I think the best thing in the RTX 2000 series cards was the dedicated video encoding, the NVENC in video coding, which in fact I'm encoding this stream on as we speak. Lots of debate about whether software encoding is higher quality in terms of picture quality than hardware encoding being the NVENC encoding in the GPUs. For me, and maybe it's just because my eyesight's getting bad as I'm getting older, I can't see a blind bit of difference. And logically in my head, GPUs are good at doing kind of sort of like, pipeline successive processing. They're not as versatile as CPUs, but they're a damn sight faster at doing what they do. So, they're there to encode, decode, and render graphics, aren't they? So that makes a bit of sense. Right, on to our next topic. A little bit of controversy from the world of Oculus and Facebook. So Oculus was acquired by Facebook not long after its birth. A few generations of headsets that have been released under the ownership, I guess, of Facebook, but it's always felt like quite a separate ecosystem. It's always had its own user accounts, it's had its own store, it's had its own website, and it's always been from Facebook. But in what is no doubt going to be, I would imagine, a relatively unpopular move, they have decided that for new users, new buyers of Oculus headsets, you're gonna have to use your Facebook account to log into Oculus. And I guess increasingly it already feels like every website you go onto, you can log in with Facebook, log in with Google. That's of course exchanging all of the kind of information about what you're doing online. Don't kid yourself, that's not being used to market particular stuff at you. That bothers a lot of people. It doesn't bother me quite so much. I kind of have a perspective that it's kind of giving me a slightly improved experience when I'm online. But it seems like odd timing, given some of the antitrust hearings that have been going on in America. Those, if you've not seen them, is Apple, Oculus, and Google, all their CEOs sitting in front of Congress, being grilled about kind of monopolistic type behavior. And of course, they all gave very slick presentations that would have been pre-prepared for them by their PR departments, no doubt. But no doubt they're going to be exchanging information backwards and forwards. But I think what I'm most concerned about here actually is this the beginning of a move to a more closed ecosystem within the Oculus environment? At the moment, we can use Steam and we can choose to use the Oculus Store. Do we end up in some sort of world in the future where there is, I don't know, the Facebook AR VR store no longer with compatibility with Steam? Therefore, a bit like the Apple Store, you're forced to buy within that ecosystem. They have first and final refusal about what can and can't be uploaded to it, and that you get locked into a platform that you thought was more flexible and ultimately isn't. Now, there'd still be workarounds like Revive and stuff like that, but I'm personally more concerned about increasing monopolistic behavior perhaps than I am with the data exchange. I mean, Facebook probably already knows more about me than I want to acknowledge. you know, it's doing quite intrusive analysis about the things you're posting, things you're looking at, and all the information that you upload on it. It will be really interesting to see how that pans out. So as it stands at the moment, new owners of Oculus Rifts will need to log in with their Facebook account. They'll have to register a Facebook account if they don't have one. Existing Oculus account holders can continue to use those Oculus accounts for now. There is now an option available for you to merge those accounts. I'm not entirely sure what merge means other than your Oculus information getting absorbed within the Facebook ecosystem, I suspect. But you can, for now, continue to use your Oculus account, but that is time-boxed. That is time-boxed for 2 years, and then there is no opt-out of this. You have to use Facebook. You have to use Facebook to use your Oculus. So really interesting timing for them to choose to do that move. They've got an upcoming kind of expo that the name escapes me as it stands at the moment, but it was Oculus something, and that's all been rebranded, been rebranded Facebook. So yeah, more interesting moves from the Zuckerberg. So those were our 3 main topics that we wanted to cover off this evening. I will just give you a quick update on a couple of projects that we've got going on. So in true Tower Tech style, these things are dragging on way too long. So first of which was we have a second SMA A8. Been planning a build in that, did a video about this a couple of months ago. I decided to wait because I wanted to see what the kind of size and shape of the new 3000 lineup from Nvidia was going to look like. Really glad that I did that. I've had no end of problem with the 2080 Ti's that I put in here because the fitting placement's in a slightly different place because the MV link is bigger and thicker than the SLI connectors that came before. The hole that I've drilled through the mid plate of the SMA A8 is misaligned from where the fittings on the GPU water block are. And by hook or by crook, I have failed demonstrably to get hardline fitting in there. So I've got soft tubing in there, which really cheeses me off actually, because all of the tubing and the rest of the build is all glass. So I didn't want to repeat that mistake. I've been looking at distro plates, really nice distro plates that will sit in on top of the mid plate there. There is no way in a chance of Sundays those are going to line up. I've actually been considering getting myself the equipment to build, trying to get a PC build in there. We built the PC, we did a video on that. We've actually got the PC up there now, and we've got, I guess, what is a bit of a bodged desk setup where the cable management is sending my OCD frankly into complete overdrive. We're also building her a Murphy bed, which for, I'm sure, what will be either inspired or really stupid reasons, decided to build that myself out of 18mm water cooling. But you know, using circular saws and stuff like that, that's been quite tiring for someone who's perhaps a little more used to being sat on their derriere than doing quite large construction projects. But actually we're nearing the end of that. We've got some good videos coming out on that as well, and that means that the bed will fold up in the wall. She can get the VR set up out and on the go, and really enjoy doing all of that. So I think that's about as much as I wanted to cover off this evening, guys. As always, I hope you're really well wherever in the world you are. I hope you've enjoyed the live stream, and I will see you in my next one.